Good afternoon. I'm Sunanda Jha from Laverne Investing, welcoming you to our weekly webinar. For today's topic, we have childcare sector, dynamics, and investment opportunities, along with one stock idea on G8 education. To know more about the same, we have with us Vijay, the portfolio manager of Laverne Investing, along with different investment managers who would share their insights on the same. So let's get started.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Vijay और आज हम बात करेंगे कि I think unbelievable sector. I think हमने last time Max से बात की थी, Zach से भी बात की, banyan tree people, and they said I think child care की बात करते हैं. तो I think child care is ऐसा abstract sector है कि वो बोलना चाहिए नहीं बोलना चाहिए, पर लेट्स टॉक इनटू दैट कि भाई चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर के अंदर व्हाट आर द अपॉर्चुनिटीज वी आर हैविंग. तो हम लोग इसमें कपल ऑफ स्टॉक्स की बात करेंगे जो ASX पे लिस्टेड है. पहले हम लोग वो चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर के ड्राइवर्स क्या क्या है, व्हाट आर द ड्राइवर्स बिहाइंड द चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर, और उसका पूरा एज एन इंडस्ट्री कितनी है, कितनी बड़ी है. सो एज एन इंडस्ट्री इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, तो इट हायर्स अराउंड 15,000 people and it around 14-15 billion dollars. So I mean it's a big industry, and same as government की family tax benefit subsidy है, चीजें है. But again let's talk कि ये industry क्या है, what is this industry, what is it. और इसके अंदर दो बड़े अच्छे stocks है जिनकी भी हम बात करेंगे. एक था G8 education. तो G8 education में it's a quite a large company as well. उसकी बहुत सारे चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर, हम उसकी बात करेंगे, एंड साइमल्टेनियसली हम बात करेंगे मेफील्ड चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर की as well. So as an industry, if we will talk as an industry, how is this industry, where the industry is going, what are the drivers of this industry, और इसके अंदर प्रॉफिट है, ऑपरेटिंग मार्जिन्स है, कंपनियां ग्रो करे, तो ऐसा है कि how the things will go. तो हम उसके डिटेल में ज्यादा बात करते हैं. Okay, so let's talk onto the first slide and we take it from there. Pooja, तुम क्या बोल रहे हो? What is your opinion? I think you are women and a mother as well, so I think you can speak better on this topic. But a couple of key statistics before I go on to this whole thing. So there are 7,500 child care centers in Australia. Almost 1.3 million children going into the child care center. Approximately 98,000 people, 986,000, sorry, getting the family tax benefit. And almost the most important, Pooja, can you guess how many babies were born in 2020? Because those babies will go into child care center. So last year, approximately 294,000 babies were born in Australia. Okay, so I mean, born babies are the key drivers of this industry. But the industry can be divided into two parts. So पहला कि भाई 0 to 5 years की जो बच्चे हैं, how they will be into that, and after hours child care centers and organized child care center, private sector, small child care centers, इसकी डिटेल में बात करते हैं. So Pooja, back to you, please. What is baby boom and what is the big picture, please?
Yeah, so talking about baby boom, you were right that we always start with the big picture first and then gradually work down our way to the investment options. So यहाँ हम बात कर रहे थे कि why child care is a booming industry that leads to parents seeking care for their children either through family members, child care centers, because in the next few slides we will review these specific demand drivers of child care industry. So yeah, moving to the next slide. So here we are talking about the demand driver where, Australia experiencing a bit of baby boom in recent years. The reason for fall includes, obviously affordability of childcare, the stress of managing a career and parenting very young children. So that's where, this will subtract the demand for childcare because homeschooling during the COVID-19 has been started already. So women are already managing their home as well as the kids. So, yeah, moving to the next slide, next slide, please. So this is the unemployment rate where the parents of young children are increasingly employed as shown by this national unemployment figure, which has trended down over the past 30 years. Next. So this is the labor force participation rate, where we see that this has continued to rise steeply over the past 30 to 40 years. This means more and more of the population is gainfully employed, leaving fewer parents and family members at home to care for the children.
Yep. So Pooja, I think ये तो जो तुम बात कर रहे हो तो बेसिकली कि भाई जो women participation है तो पहले औरतें घर पे बैठती थी so 70s और 80s में and then फिर around तो आज की तारीख में I think statistics देखे तो around almost 70-80% women काम पे जा रही है so I think that is तो अगर काम पे जा रहे हैं तो बच्चा संभालने वाला चाहिए. अब ना दो बड़ी चीजें हो रही है इसी के अंदर. तो एक तो पहले पीपल में गेटिंग मैरिड एट 20-25 पे हम शादी करते थे, अब 35 पे शादी कर रहे हैं. तो 35 पे जब शादी करेंगे तो पहले 2 बच्चे होते थे तो बच्चे 1 हो जाएंगे फ्यूचर में. Max, what do you say? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the pressure is, यार सही कह रहे हैं आप. You know, pressure is increasing financially. यहाँ पे आपको रोज आए दिन आपको सुनने में आता है मीडिया में कि you know, it's very hard for first home buyers to enter the market. They have to, you know, save for 15 years or something to enter into Australia, Sydney or Melbourne market for first home. तो उसमें फिर तो ये, you know, both husband and wife or partners have to, you know, be out working. So if they're out working, who's going to be looking after the child? You know, so we're not living in a vertically integrated, वो जो होता है ना, multi-generational family unit we used to, you know, grandparents and all the larger family living together. That's no longer the case. So someone's got to look after the child at home.
Yeah, so, but Max, the problem is this way. The problem is this way, that the housing prices are expensive and people getting married later. So now आप देखो, so initially the people were getting married at 20-25. Now people are getting married at 30-35. So, and now for 5 years, so the baby, I think, where a lady can become a mother, the time gap is, instead of 2 kids, I think 1 kid is the future. That's what I see at this moment.
Oh, I agree with that.
The fertility rate and those things are much lower.
I agree with that. I think people are, you know, going on to university these days. They're doing a degree, 1 degree. They probably don't get a job on that. So they go, you know, there's job insecurity. So they go for masters or they go overseas to work. All that takes time. You know, I know so many people around me that have, you know, including myself, I got married at the age of 36. So, you know, it takes time to build a community.
For you, you had a couple of girlfriends, so that's fine. That's what that was your problem.
I'm glad my wife is not here.
Oh, I'm sorry, just a joke. Okay, but I think let's put that back to you. I think these are the drivers we need to be very careful when we talk about the childcare industry. Put that back to you.
Yeah. So yeah, next slide, we can see that workforce participation has, you know, peaked. So that's where, you know, we can see that this is quite impressive. Australian adult females have one of the highest labor force participation rates in the world, even ahead of the women living in the US and Europe. So yeah, this is the female participation in workforce. Next slide, please. So this is what we were talking since the last few slides. The unemployment participation rate is, you know, lower. The workforce participation has peaked. So this is early this decade after the COVID situation, the scenario has been changed. So then will, you know, trend lower in the coming decades. This, I feel, will place great pressure on women as they usually take the primary career role for both children and their aging parents. Next slide, please. So, similarly, if we see here, this shows while our labor force participation rates will fall due to more seniors retiring, but the pressure on younger adults. So, yeah, next slide, I would like my colleague Bhaveshwari, if she can, you know, put some highlight on the demand driver where the woman has to manage between the aging parents and the young children.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pooja. So as we mentioned earlier, that women have increasing pressure on them, and on one hand to participate in employment due to housing affordability issues, and on the other hand, they are trying to balance the caring responsibility of both children and parents. So now it's worth mentioning here that while women are increasingly being employed, they are still not being able to work full-time hours, and the key reasons are, shown here, maybe their top caring responsibilities. So can you move on to second slide, please? Yeah, another drive of demand for formal paid childcare is obviously affordability and cost. Now, there are two parties that pay for childcare in Australia, that is parents and government. Both of these parties are increasingly budgetary pressures. Move on to next slide, please. Now, this brings on to the next topic of the appetite for parents to absorb increasing childcare costs in the future. I see parents struggling to meet childcare costs in the future. In the first slide, we see that shows the median household rising from around $20,000 per annum in 1990 to well over $60,000 per annum. This chart doesn't account for inflation. Yeah, next slide, please.
Bhaveshwari, इसके अंदर ये बोल सकते हैं, you can say this words is, देखो अगर जैसे कि जो चाइल्ड केयर की कॉस्ट थी अभी तो रिसेंटली एन एवरेज 0 to 5 years का बेबी है तो अराउंड यूजुअली दे I think usually 1 to 3 days, so 25 hours of child care is needed technically, and then so out of the whole market, so 60% अगर तुम देखो तो we talk about the small babies, I mean the kids 0 to 5 years, so that is a 60% market, and then the 60 to 70%, and then the rest of the market is around after hours, so where the women. But now the problem here is one driver is see the trend is my best friend, I mean whatever happens, but if the trend works well, then the things work well. So I think इसके अंदर the government cost is there, but समझने की कोशिश करो. There are 3 years back there were childcare centers were less. Now there are oversupply of the childcare centers, 7,500 childcare centers. तो कोई भी चीज का oversupply होगा तो प्राइस तो कम होगी. So that's my, हम लोग उसकी बात करते हैं, but वो एक जरा सोचने वाली बात है. Okay, Max, am I making sense?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the biggest issue right now in the childcare service market is oversupply of childcare centers. And उसके पीछे एक key driver है कि जो real estate investors है ना, obviously वो commercial real estate में invest करते हैं, जिस तरह ये सर्विस सेंटर्स जो होते हैं, क्या नाम है अपना, ये कैलटेक्स और इस तरह के, या फिर वुलवर्थ एंकर्ड लोकल नेबरहुड शॉपिंग सेंटर. अब इंक्रीजिंगली जो है एसएमएसएफ funds and investors are going into child care facilities as landlords. तो उसमें वो because there's so much capital looking for return, तो वो बना के दे देते हैं, वो कहते हैं ऑपरेटर्स को आ जाओ और इसको ऑपरेट करो, वो भले ऑपरेट कर सके या ना कर सके प्रॉफिटेबली. So ये इशू है.
Yep, no, absolutely I agree. Bhaveshwari, back to you.
So the next is the work from home detector. So another driver of demand is most recently working from home trend, which is since COVID-19 struck in 2020. Now you can see here that majority of the working population who can work flexibly would like to continue work flexibly. This will reduce the demand for hours required as the local child care center, and particularly the demand at the long day care centers, which is before and after school hours. And now I would request Vijay to continue.
So oversupply of the child care cost increase होगी, industry कहाँ जा रही है? So out of 7,500 जो child care centers हैं, तो उसमें जो public listed companies जो है वो है G8 Education, and then we have Mayfield Child Care. Now दूसरा एक Good Start करके था, if anybody aware of ABC Learning Center that got busted in 2008. So I think that was taken over by Good Start. So I think that around 2008. So I think उसकी number of child care centers देखे किसके पास कितने हैं, that can give you an idea. So I think so सबसे बड़ी कंपनी अगर देखे तो Good Start है, तो Good Start है around 649 child care centers है. G8 Education के पास 470 centers है. And बाकी Koo is one of the oldest. I think around 1895 में चालू हुआ था. My goodness, I can't believe. चाइल्ड केयर सेक्टर 1895 में भी थे. Good. हाँ, उस टाइम पे भी औरतें भी थी, आदमी भी थे, तो औरतें उस टाइम पे काम कर रही थी. Very good. Something good to know. And तो I think अगर ये सब मिला के देखो तो 2000 ऑर्गेनाइज्ड हाई लेवल सेक्टर के अंदर almost 2000 है, around 1500 2000, and rest of the time are small private operators that are running up the shop. So अभी इसके डिटेल के अंदर बात करें तो क्या क्या चीजें होगी, that if you go to the next slides, तो कितना एक्सपेंसिव इज ऑस्ट्रेलिया का सबसे इज द मोस्ट एक्सपेंसिव चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर? नो, वी गेट द न्यूजीलैंड. Next, New Zealand. How come New Zealand is the most expensive one in the childcare cost?
विजय, न्यूजीलैंड में ना इंसिडेंटली बहुत सारी चीजें बहुत महंगी हैं. वहां पे पेट्रोल भी बहुत महंगा है. यहाँ पे $2.50 का पहुंच रहा है. वहां पे तो बहुत अरसे से है. यहाँ पे over $2 है. It's just New Zealand housing market is more expensive. It's just the structure of the economy. It's got just a high cost base. तो उसमें ये भी एक part of life है कि child care is very expensive there as well. Yeah, it just New Zealand will surprise you in a whole range of cost items where they're higher than other countries. I don't particularly know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Basically, तुम्हारी cost ही high है, labor cost is high है, तो real estate highest. I think real estate भी काफी उनका high है. तो ये सभी जो they are the main drivers. I think you got real estate, the rental cost, and then you got labor cost. So this and it's a labor intensive industry anyway. So that gets more expensive anyway. Next, please. Again, I talked about these things as I take the same figures, that number of around 60-70% का child care वो है, and कि जो बच्चे छोड़ देते हो and they continue करते हैं. Outside school hours की बात की जो 30-40% मार्केट की आपको बताया कि वो है, and family day care center जो 10% पे है, and all these things people get the family tax benefit as well, and उसमें child care को सब्सिडी और रिबेट मिल जाता है. So next please. तो अगर उसके अंदर वही सेक्टर को रिपीट किया तो इसके अंदर देखो मेजोरिटी तो वही आ रहे हैं, इसके 70% वही चार्ट है अगर वही रिपीट हो रही है. सो बेसिकली द मेन मार्केट इज एन private sector players and organized child care centers. So these are the main drivers of the whole industry. Okay, now again drivers की फिर से बात की. So demand for formal education, voluntary, is it a good driver? 50-50, not that important. Increasing competition, yes. तो हमने वो भी बात की कि अगर इतने सारे चाइल्ड केयर सेंटर्स हैं, अगेन देखो माइंड वेल 2018 के अंदर 315,000 babies were born in Australia. 2019 305,000, and 2020 COVID 294,000. So that's again 5% decline in number of babies that are produced. I can't use the word produce. बच्चे कम हुए. So अगर बच्चे ही कम है तो इंडस्ट्री भी तो कम हो जाएगी ना. So it's as simple as that. But anyway, प्राइस इंक्रीजिंग, अगर नंबर ज्यादा है तो प्राइसिंग, बच्चे भी कम है और नंबर्स ज्यादा है तो देयर इज नो रीजन कि हाउ थिंग्स विल बी ड्राइविंग. डेवलपमेंट लेट नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट. हाँ, एक इम्पोर्टेंट है कि मर्जर्स एक्विजिशन में अगर देखो तो कंपनी इतनी ज्यादा नहीं है. सो आई थिंक बट अभी तो आइदर ये हो सकता है कि जैसे बहुत सारे जो अराउंड 4,000-5,000 जो प्राइवेट सेक्टर ऑपरेटर्स है वो वहां से बिग चंक में से चले जाए, एंड दैट इंडस्ट्री बिकमिंग मोर ऑर्गेनाइज्ड. दैट इज बट देन दिस शुड पीपल दिस सो अगर बट I doubt it. It means there is a lot of funding that can be happening. Then only this can work. But that's again a second side of the coin. And I think उसमें से अगर कोई कंपनी वो लेवल पे है तो I think G8 Education and Mayfield. But still, let's see how the things are. But we have to look at the future that's coming up and how the industry turns out into next 1 or 2 years. Okay, अभी हम बात कर रहे हैं, दो स्टॉक की बात करेंगे. So Max, up to you. And I think आप लोग बड़े अच्छे एनालिस्ट हो तो आप बात करेंगे. तो मेजर की G8 एजुकेशन की बात करेंगे, आप उसके बारे में कुछ बताओ.
जी.
और दूसरा था जो मेफील्ड बारे में बताओ प्लीज. आपकी टीम, आई थिंक वी गॉट चाय एज वेल. चाय, तुम्हें हिंदी आ गई? चाय, you know Hindi now?
Sorry, yeah, I'm pretty fluent now, I think.
Very good. All the best. I hope you are my good friend. Oh, yeah. So, it's up to you, the team, and you guys can take over this
Yeah.
question of both G8 education and Mayfield, please.
Yeah. Let me just set, thanks, Vijay. Let me just set the sort of a bit of a base for what who the operators are. As you mentioned, the listed operators are, G8 Education, which is the sort of second largest in the market at the moment, and Mayfield Childcare is a very small cap company, which I'll talk about separately. But a lot of the operators are either not-for-profit charitable organizations, or there has been superannuation, sovereign wealth funds moving into this sector and consolidating, as we mentioned, as one of the reasons why to play this sector through M&A. They're buying up private operators and consolidating them, getting scale through, putting in systems, putting in, head offices that are obviously much more efficient to run those. But look, I think you mentioned ABC Learning. It did a first consolidation play 20 years ago in the childcare space. It started from basically 5 or 6 childcare centers in the late 90s, and grew to almost 1,000 centers at the height in 2008. And the way it did was, it purchased at 4 times multiple EBIT multiples from a private operator, and brought it into the listed company fold, which the listed market valued those assets at 10 times, 11 times multiple. So that's where the arbitrage was, as long as you could continue funding it from debt funding. And that went for a long while for ABC Learning until the GFC happened, and they couldn't operate at higher cost of debt at the time, which was repriced. So G8 Education, to a certain extent, is playing the same game. They are acquiring smaller businesses, and bringing them as part of the G8 fold, and through mergers and acquisitions. Now ABC Learning's example shows you that they got to about 900 odd centers, and that was pretty much the top in the Australian market. They saturated the market at the time, and they started going overseas for opportunities because they couldn't continue consolidating. Now, G8 Education has obviously got about 470 centers at the moment. Could it get to 900? I'm not sure. But look, it's getting harder and harder. And another thing to remember about this sector is, because it's partly government funded, the bigger these organizations get, and especially if they're listed, all eyes are on them. So if they show a lot of profit, the unions start to pull them down, because they start complaining that their staff are not being paid well or funded well for education, and rightly so. And obviously, if the government is funding a private operator and is making huge profits, that does not look good either. So what I'm suggesting is, M&A acquisition based opportunity for investors has an upper limit to it for the organization when it gets too big to be noticed. Now, Mayfield Childcare is again playing the same game. They've got about 36 or 37 centers. They are focusing on higher end centers where the parents and the client base have got better jobs. The centers are located in places like Castle Hill and Piermont in Sydney, where they can price these services a bit better. So, and even in sort of economic downturns, those parents are able to hold their jobs better, so they can continue sending their children to the centers, and therefore continue to keep these centers chugging along. Now, compare that to G8 Education. They've got obviously big centers, small centers, they've in all sorts of different locations. And so, they are more subject to economic slowdowns, and parents who are in the lower echelons of a work cohort who are more susceptible to losing their jobs. So that has obviously affected G8 Education's numbers during operating numbers during COVID. Probably less so than Mayfield was affected. But if you look at, we've shown the returns so far, comparison of Mayfield's share price performance versus G8 Education. Since Mayfield was IPO'd in late 2016, so from about the same time we've charted these two companies versus Vanguard ETF or ASX 300, which sort of gives you a benchmark for how the ASX 300 performed over the same time. Now you can see that the share price performance of, as shown by the green chart, is down about 64% over that period. Mayfair has done a little bit better. It's sort of breaking even, about 3% above, and both of these stocks have underperformed the broader Australian index. It's a tough market. It's a tough sector. Yeah, so if we can move on to the next slide, please. I just want to show you just quickly the comparison of financials, P&L of the two companies. Mayfield is obviously on the left, very small cap, sort of nano cap, really micro cap stock, 36 mil. It is interesting that they've done an acquisition recently of Genius, a company called Genius Childcare. They are, as I mentioned, a higher end operator. They've done a deal with Genius for the next 5 years where Genius as a private operator will develop newer locations of centers. They will get them up to an occupancy level of 70%. They will get meet the operating metrics and P&L metrics. And then if they get that center to a level of maturity, that will then be purchased by Mayfield Childcare through an acquisition process. So that's where the ongoing potential for growth for Mayfield is. There's no money, I mean, there's no alpha, in my opinion, in holding mature childcare assets, because over time you're going to get newer operators or competition move in, and your occupancy level will go under pressure. So really, it's either through development or acquisitions. So if you look at the revenue in the past, 5 odd years of Mayfield, back in 2017 was 27 mil. It's about 37 mil. There's acquisitions in there as well. Operating income has grown as well, but really on the EPS basis, it's held at 12 cents per share. Right at the bottom, as you can see. So it's held its profitability reasonably well. On the right hand side, you can see G8 Education. Its revenue has bumped around a little bit because it's got good assets as well as bad centers. Its operating income has, in last year, it was a loss. Right at the bottom, EPS has sort of bumped around as well, 19 cents back in 2017 per share, and then was in negative 25 cents per share in the last calendar year. So you take a pick where between those two. Next slide, I'll just keep showing you some of the other numbers on the two companies. Strategy wise, again, the shareholder returns are really going to come from acquisitions for both the companies, development pipeline, and in the case of Mayfield, it's higher end centers. G8 Education is mass market centers, because once you get up to 470 odd centers, you're really taking whatever you can get from the market. It's harder to become too cute. But look, the share price has come off a long way, so there is some valuation play on G8 Education, which we continue to like on a short-term basis. Both the companies are potential takeover targets as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the sovereign wealth funds are playing in this space. They are doing acquisitions amongst the private operators. There was another listed childcare operator that was recently taken over by a sovereign or pension fund backed private operator named Busy Bees. They're backed by Ontario Pension Fund. And that was taken over. So look, I think Mayfield and G8 Education our takeover targets.
Max,
Yep.
over here, you said about BZBs. Now in BZBs, they have around 90 childcare and
Yeah.
90 childcare centers in Australia, and
Yeah.
basically, so I think is it something like a company can become global companies into these sectors?
Look, I mean, you
No,
know,
I think it is very difficult.
it's very difficult. This is what I mean. Look, you know, these are services businesses. There's only so much scale you can get in a service business because, you know, you've got to manage staff. You've got. I mean, I was talking to a private childcare operator, you know, as part of the preparation for this, and it's a difficult business to manage. And Busy Bees, yes, as you said, close to 100 centers in Australia, but they're a global operator. They've got like 650 or thereabout centers globally. It's
So Max,
you know,
Max,
it's
just
hard
I
to-
remind you over here. I remind you over here. Suppose take an example, the same
Yeah.
as 7-Elevens are operated,
Yes.
same as McDonald's are operated. Can these kind of things can come into operationally execution?
No, I don't. I personally think, I mean, having managed a similar government-funded but in a different space services business, there's scale is you if you reach a certain level of scale, certainly when you know we're talking about hundreds of centers and geographically disparate, they are become very difficult to operate profitably, and that's where you know we've seen in the case of ABC Learning, they got unstuck. And these sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, they will take them to a level where they will bring them to a listed market, probably offload them, and the listed, you know, passive investors will probably get caught short on the longer end. So we're very cautious. We're very cautious about these kind of businesses.
Fantastic, Max. Thank you very much. Just we got 2 more slides. I think you give us a little bit idea.
So yeah, so that's all I wanted to mention. Yep. So
G8, you just give the idea. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Zach, did you want to quickly talk through G8 Education? You've met with the company.
Yeah, just very quickly. Obviously, G8, it's been said already. Just a couple of points to highlight. Really, that the balance sheet is in a very strong position. It's a net debt position, net cash position. So that gives them opportunity for potentially capital management if no inorganic growth opportunities present themselves. And they also, from half of the results, the company kind of suggested, management kind of suggested that dividends were going to be, dividends were going to be reinstated. The only thing I'd say is you've got to be very careful in this industry to lead a purely acquisition-led strategy because it's high fixed costs, and if you're racking up debt, so G8 is actually net cash position right now. It's actually learned the hard way of just having an M&A strategy, because with high operating costs, highly leveraged balance sheet, and if the market conditions go against you, which what's been experiencing in the childcare services around oversupply, you will get hurt very, very badly. So you got to be very careful of guys that come in with a consolidation strategy, bolt-on acquisition strategy. In fact, we've seen that across many, many industries, not just the supply chain. But G8, from our perspective, from a valuation perspective, around the dollar just looks over too much value. Absolutely, and the industry broadly is struggling, and it is challenging. But G8 at current levels, from a valuation perspective, from a balance sheet perspective, from organic growth, so management has tilted more of their focus towards organic growth rather than just acquired growth. So yeah, this is one we like.
Yep. No, Zach, thank you very much. I think that was a brilliant analysis, and I think you met the people as well. So again, thank you very much. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, Vijay. Yeah. So, Chhai, I have one question. Since we are talking about childcare center, and I have one stock in focus which I used to track, which is Arena Right, which is basically they favor into real estate investment trust. but they are into sectors such as childcare, healthcare, education, and etc. But my focus mainly here is into childcare, since Arena had 234 around early learning centers assets and 11 healthcare properties. Okay. And they are well run into scalable strategy. Now, they have the business model of deploying the properties into childcare centers, wherein, you know, people can come and invest into ELC's assets. They buy a small number of ELC assets and divest other properties, trading at a substantial premium to book value. So compared to childcare operators who have dealt with parents and children, and as far as the response that we have in COVID-induced demand fluctuations, so does Arena also remains one of the best buys to play in the childcare center as compared to G8 education?
I'm not sure. Chhai, you came across Arena?
Yeah, absolutely. We've met with the company management team of both G8 and Arena quite a number of times. And we've been analyzing it for more than 10 years. So you're absolutely right. Arena REIT is both a childcare, a landlord of early learning centers, and it owns a smaller portion in the healthcare arena. The question for Arena REIT right now is whether there's still value in the business. So it's trading at a premium to its net tangible assets. And so it's been doing that for quite some time. So the question is, it's still a good investment or not? Right now, it's more on the neutral territory, fair value territory. It still offers a really good dividend yield, and you know the occupancy rate is fantastic. It's both 100% for early learning and 100% for healthcare. So the portfolio is 100% occupied. The weighted average lease expiry of the property is split roughly about 22 years for early learning centers and about 12 years for healthcare. So overall portfolio, about 20 years weighted average lease expiry. So it's a very, very good portfolio, and it deserves the premium to net tangible assets that it's trading on. But again, the question is it a good investment? I mean, it's done really well year to date and over the last 2 years, collecting rents and whatnot. And it's, you know, we think that it's more in the neutral territory. It's a stable investment. It'll give you the very good dividend yield, but whether it can expand more by way of appreciating premium to that of the NTA, we are not quite sure on that front. But nonetheless, it's a very good landlord.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Very well explained.
Thank you, Bhaveshwari. Thank you very much for getting Arena REIT with talking about the landlord space, and I think that was very good. Thank you, Chhai. Again, thank you very much, and I think you can visit our website www.laverneinvesting.com.au, and with the Banyan Tree and our people get access to research portal and the trading portal as well. So again, my name is Vijay, and this is our general opinion and advice only, no personal advice. So see you again next week, and we are portfolio construction specialist as well. So ring us if you need any help onto those kinds of things as well. Fantastic. You all have a lovely day, and I'll see you next week. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Banyan Tree people. And thank you, Max, as well. And Chhai, you are brilliant. And Bhaveshwari, you are brilliant as well. Thank you. Thank you, Pooja, for your inputs as well. Thank you. Thank you all.